Spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
I said what I said. Wait, what? Is there something wrong with that? The entire room fell silent and he had no idea why. You might need a mentor. That's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but there are a lot of people who rise to the top because they have an incredible skill set. Incredible skill set. They've been really good at doing what they do, making good money at it, promoting people, promoting themselves, moving along just fine. And then all of a sudden, a little shift in the scales of economy, a little change in a process or a procedure, a little bit of a movement in culture and the way that life is analyzed by the public. And suddenly somebody who's been on the top all this time realizes, I'm outdated. I didn't realize the target had moved. I didn't realize you couldn't say that in public anymore. And so I accidentally did. I listened to a guy yesterday talk about how he had been brought in to do some training. And there was a particular pronunciation of a word that the way he'd always heard it, somebody else interpreted it as something entirely different. Oh, I know. It happened to me when I was in England. There was a word that I thought was kind of the scaled down word of what you would call the backside of a little kid who might need a little correction. And I said, if you don't stop running on the top of the chairs, I'm going to spank your fanny. That's not what that is in England. Nope. It's a totally different thing. And you would never want to do that to anyone. And you certainly might go to jail if you do it to a kid. Yeah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look that up. But sometimes it's as simple as that one word misspoken that can literally derail your entire business. There was a guy last name of Dean that ran for president many years ago who stood on a stage and ran down the list of all the places he was going to go, and he was going to supercharge the atmosphere and it was going to be awesome and everybody was getting excited. And then all of a sudden the media team cut the crowd mic. And so they only had his mic. And in the audio, you hear this crescendo of his voice and the crowd's voice and his voice and the crowd's voice and his voice and the crowd's voice and then his voice and then his voice and then his voice. And he sounded like an absolute maniac. And that one shift, that one decision by whoever was on the audio board or in the editing room to mute the crowd mic ended his political career. He was a serious contender for president of the United States, but that one change ended his political career. I went to an event yesterday, paid to go to an event yesterday to meet a guy who's, well, he's doing what I do, but he's doing it better. He's doing what I do, but he's making a lot more money at it. I've been doing this for 15 years. He's been doing it for 25 plus. I've been doing this and just barely breaking the 6-figure mark. He's breaking the 7-figure mark. That tells me I got something to learn. Probably a whole lot of somethings. Don't ask my friends. They have a list. Don't ask my wife. She has a book. I got a lot to learn. I get that. But you might ask yourself, if you're already a leader, if you're already running your own company, if you're already running your own business, you're already running your own ministry, you're the top dog at this game, why in the world would you need a mentor? See, the irony was this room probably had 200-ish people in it, and there were a handful of my peers, people who work at the same level as me, who do very similar things to me, right here in the same market, who were also in that room. Even one of my clients that's been a client for over a dozen years was in that room. Why? Well, because we all have the wisdom to know we don't know it all. Now, if you're in leadership, if you've risen to the top because you built your own company, or if you've risen to the top because you've got incredible skills, you've risen to the top because, I don't know, daddy owned the place, all of those are possibilities. And all of them still leave the possibility that you have a lot to learn. So why in the world would you need a coach or a mentor? Well, the answer is really simple. If the person that's correcting you, directing you, pointing out your flaws is your spouse, you're going to have a troubled relationship at home. Not to say they shouldn't, and not to say you shouldn't listen when they do. But if that's the only person, their opinion might be a little biased. And by that I simply mean their interest in your change is going to benefit them or the kids. And that may be it. If it's your boss at work or your coworkers at work, it might be. Might be. Might is an enormous word in this sentence. It might be that their only desire is to make you a better person. Probably not so much, though. They want more productivity out of you. They want you to work more so they don't have to. They want you to get things done more efficiently so they have less strain, stress, more productivity and profitability. That's what they're mentoring, coaching, guiding, directing, correcting you for. That's fine. But what if their objective is to correct you into non-existence? I read a story this morning. In fact, I shared it on a couple of my social media platforms about a kid that just this last weekend made news. He made a lot of news. But if you read the entire article, this is about a kid that at 17 years old thought, I'm going to college to play football. I want to one day be in the NFL. And everybody looked at him and went, probably not. Now, I have friends who've played in the NFL. And when I stand next to them, I feel like a shrimp. I mean, not a jumbo shrimp either, like a little tiny cocktail shrimp. And you see them on TV, they don't look that big. Maybe the linemen do, but really? And then you stand next to somebody like Troy Aikman and you realize, okay, that's a bigger dude than I thought he was. It just happens to be that the linemen are even bigger than that. But this little guy wants to play in the NFL? 134, I think, is what it said, rejections from universities to play football. I didn't know there were that many to tell him no. But he got a whole lot of rejection letters. Finally, he got one. Zero chance that if he plays at that school and does great, that he's going to move on. Coaches were like, yeah, well, I guess, we don't have a whole lot of other candidates, so come on. Played for a couple of years, didn't go well. He got an opportunity to transfer, so he threw his name in the hat and said, I'll transfer to wherever. And one college took a chance on him. Well, I say took a chance. They hadn't had a winning season since 1984. I was still in high school. In fact, that was my freshman year, 1984. It's been a minute since this university has had a winning season. So they bring in this scrawny, frail, unknown third stringer from another university that had no chance of getting him to the NFL. And they're like, well, we're going to put you on the practice squad. And then, miracle of miracles, the two people ahead of him got hurt. Now, what does all this have to do with mentors and coaches? Everything, because the coach of one team, 134 of them, if I remember right, said, you're not good enough for us. The coach of another team was like, I got nothing to lose. Why not? And the coach of another team was like, hey, you could not do any worse than coming here to play with us, and we're still going to make you third string. None of them had his best interest in heart. All of them were looking at themselves going, what's in it for me? There's a whole type of people that only ask the question, what's in it for me? They're not worried about others. They're not worried about the overall good. Just trust me. If their core question is what's in it for me, they are not altruistic. This kid has been bounced around like a ping pong ball on a hardwood floor to all of these places that rejected, didn't see talent. They didn't follow John Maxwell's rule to see everyone as a 10 and pull the potential out of them. No, they looked at this kid and went, there's not much there to work with. But last weekend, his face went viral on almost every social media platform. Because on a 4th and 4, with 9 minutes left in the game, he took a quarterback draw into the end zone, dived across the finish line, got hit from 10 directions, and scored the touchdown that made that game the championship win in a 16-0 season with a team that had not seen a victory of that magnitude since 1984. Let me just tell you, Back to the Future had not yet been released the last time this team had a winning season. And this kid that nobody believed in, this kid that nobody saw a hope in, this kid that was driven by his mother's health, performed to a level that nobody could have expected. Now, I'd be willing to bet that somewhere in the background, not the coaches on the field necessarily, not the head coach of the team, not the recruiter, obviously, somebody believed in him as much as he believed in himself. See, a coach or a mentor has the ability to stand outside your existing circumstances with no iron in the fire. I got no dog in this hunt. I got no horse in this race. My job is to stand on the outside and look at all of your skill sets, all of your abilities, all of your personality traits, all of your known and unknown flaws, and then pound you on them. I say it like this for people that are in our speaker coaching program. My job is not to help you prepare your presentation. I will do that. In fact, we will grind on your presentation one story at a time. We'll compile your speeches from the stories of events that you've actually lived through, lessons you've practically lived through and learned yourself. And I don't mean practically in that, well, kind of way. I mean, you have walked it out. Otherwise, it's not going to be in a story that I'm going to craft for you, and it's not going to be in a speech that you're going to prepare. But when I work with the presentation, I back up and I work with the presenter first. Why? Because I don't care if you're a presenter who's handling mergers and acquisitions. I don't care if you're a presenter who's doing hiring and firing. I don't care if you're a presenter in front of high school students, college students, or CEOs. If the person isn't ready to take the stage, their character should not be amplified. Let me say that again. If the person, the who that you are, is not ready to be on display, they shouldn't be amplified with a microphone. They shouldn't be amplified with a platform. They shouldn't be amplified for others to look at as a role model. Go back a couple of episodes. We talked about people who had no desire to be a role model, but they just can't help it. You can't avoid it when people pay attention to you. You might try. But when the whole world is looking and you slip, that means the whole world saw you slip. And if you go back to just the last episode on the tough decisions, what you realize is I didn't have to make that choice, that decision, that statement, that move in front of the entire world. Wisdom says, make that choice sooner. Make that choice earlier in life. And a good coach or a good mentor pounds you on that question in the darkness. Watch every movie ever about a fighter, a boxer, boxers especially. They tend to get up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and run. UFC fighters, some professional athletes on every level, they perform in the dark when there's no one else around. But almost always because they got that one coach that's calling them at 4:55 going, you have your shoes on yet? It's time to run. It's dark outside. It's raining outside. I didn't ask you that. I asked, do you have your shoes on? Are you getting ready now for what's next? See, a good coach or a good mentor most of the time a mentor. Here's the distinction between the two. If you're not clear, listen close. The mentor has walked the path you're on. They've made the same stupid mistakes that you are about to make, and they're going to go, hold up a minute, take 3 steps left and then proceed, or you're going to blow your leg off. That's what a mentor does. Don't make that commitment in that relationship right now. Hold off for a minute. Don't make that investment right now. Hold off for a minute. I love watching Patrick Bet-David, who's built a billion-dollar company from nothing, who can look to someone and go, let's talk about your next 5 moves and keep your enemies close. Because these people you think are just your haters, they're actually giving you the most valuable education you can get. Some of it is absolute hogwash and it doesn't matter. But some of it will change your life if you pay attention. That's the value of a good mentor. The coach. Here's the distinction between them. The mentor has been on that path before and knows where you're going. In my case, that's leadership. That's communication. That's 31 years of marriage. That's 4 kids and 13 grandkids. It's a life of faith. I've been studying the Word of God for a little over 35 years. Those are the things that I bring to the table as a mentor. I am not your mentor in high finance. But as a coach, my job is to poke you and ask those questions that you know deep down inside you've already wrestled with, but you refuse to let the truth of that answer bubble up to be dealt with. And so what do? You suppress the question. Oh, you've pondered the question. You didn't like the question. You really didn't like the potential answer. And so you just push it aside. You pretend like it ain't there. A good coach keeps poking you until that question comes back again. The question before the question. I know what you're asking now, but is that the in the moment decision? Did you ask the question before that, before you got to the moment? Could you have changed the moment that you're in if you'd made a better decision before the moment? And what's the question you didn't ask then because you didn't like the answer? That's what a good coach does. My coach, instructor, who trained me over a dozen years ago, love the way he says it. And this is Coaching 101, if you've trained in coaching. A good coach isn't the one who's pounding on you to do what they want you to do, to become like them. The good coach is the one asking the questions because they know the answer is already in you. You just haven't dealt with it or brought it to the surface. So the more questions I ask, sometimes the more painful it gets for people. But what that generally means is that the aha moment is coming. I was talking to a lady just last night, and as we were talking, she said, I've been working on my book recently, and as I'm working on the book, I'm trying to put together my own mental timeline of my own story. And she pauses for a minute, and then she tells me when she was 5 years old, a scene that happened. And she's tears running down her face. She said, I didn't realize, this woman's in her 60s. She said, I didn't realize until I was working on my book last week that scene when I was 5 has driven my entire life. Every academic, every professional, every relational relationship I've ever had started in that moment. I'm like, that's an aha moment. That's not just an aha moment for you to realize that that's the truth. But because she works with kids now, she understands the power of, I was 5 then, I'm 60 now, for 55 plus years. What happened in that moment has driven my success. And now I know how to help other kids in that age range change the trajectory of their life. Wow. Now that's an aha moment. My job is not to write your speech. You're the one that lived through the story. I'll help you craft those stories into perfection. Organize them into a talk that has profound impact. But I'm also going to challenge you. Is the story that you're telling yourself that shaped your life, is it true? See, my job is to prepare the presenter before the presentation. My job is to mentor you through that process and say, okay, hang on, I wouldn't do it like that. See, I paid a guy yesterday to sit in his audience to get in his sphere. And when I have the cash flow to do it, I don't right now. It's $100 grand to be in his inner circle. $100 grand. I have never come anywhere near investing that or paying that or asking for that. But it's on my bucket list. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But I know without a doubt that he knows some things I don't know. He has some relationships that I don't have. He's been in places that I haven't been. He's done things that I haven't done. And I need to be in environments like that with people like that to learn things like that that I don't know yet. I've only been doing this a dozen years. He's doubled my experience. He's doubled my wisdom. He's doubled my success. And I can tell you this as a fact. I know as a fact because I watched the process happen. John Maxwell had written 75 books. Maybe it was 72 at the time that I joined the John Maxwell team. It's closer to 100 now. And with all of those books and all those best-selling titles and being recognized by most as the #1 leadership trainer in the world, he didn't have a social media strategy. He spent 95% of his time traveling around the world, standing on stages, making $100,000 to $250,000 at a time, selling books at the back of the room by the busload. That was the model. It worked really well until COVID. Tony Robbins says the same thing. He said we'd already spent tens of thousands of dollars. We booked a venue. We were ready to rock and roll. We were expecting 10,000 people to show up. Then we sold more tickets. We bought a bigger venue. We're expecting 50,000 people to show up. And then COVID. And they closed the venue. And even in a venue big enough for 100,000 people, nope, you can only have 100. What? Yeah, 6 foot rule. He said after we lost all the money on that, but we still had a clamoring for the people who had signed up to come. He said, I built a 50-foot ceiling studio so that I could accommodate. And last year, I believe that live event, live, virtual, free, worldwide event, changed because Tony didn't have a virtual reality option. Wasn't in his wheelhouse. Wasn't his thought process. Same with John Maxwell. John Maxwell said, I lost $1 million and booked reserved events. And I didn't have another strategy for it. So what did he do? What did they both do? Excuse me, anybody know how to host an event from one place that can be seen by millions of people? Well, television broadcasts have been doing that for a while, but we want to interact with them. John Maxwell started doing his leadership training online during COVID, built his own studios out, built his own Zoom abilities out, and offered it every day at lunch for like 100 days. That's pretty impressive. The man's already a bestseller. He's already made millions of dollars. He's already influenced tens of millions, if not 100 million people around the world. Why not just put your feet up, take your shoes off, and enjoy your puppy? Because he knows he has an obligation to impact people. And when he reached an impasse, I don't know that. What do? You hire a coach, you hire a mentor, or you outsource. That's what he did. See, what I learned from the guy yesterday that I paid to be in, his name is Paul Getter, by the way. If you're in the speaking industry and you want to know how to step up a little bit, I've done the Pete Vargas thing. I've done a lot of trainings online with Grant Baldwin and all these other guys. But the thing that I saw with Paul yesterday was, yeah, he speaks. Yeah, he trains. Yeah, he's got stories. Yeah, he's got curriculum. But he has a system that I don't have yet. And his system is what makes the difference between 6 figures and 7 figures. Aha. I mean, I have systems, little bitty baby systems. I don't have systems like he has systems. I don't have people like he has people. But his people and his systems make what I do 7 figures. That's what I need to do. I'm going to learn something from that. I'm going to apply some of that wisdom. And the minute I can afford to get in that circle, I'm going to get in that circle. But I can tell you, in the 12 to 15 years that I've been doing what I'm doing right now, I've made a lot of mistakes. That if I just shared with you some of those nuggets, you'd realize it was the equivalent of take 3 steps left before you go forward again, or you're going to blow your leg off. Oh, you can spend the kind of money that I've spent to get where I'm at. It's a lot. But I know people who've spent more and not made it this far because they gave up sooner. I'm a little hard-headed, a little stubborn. Ask my wife. But I also know, like John knew, I also know, like Tony knew, I have an obligation, I have a skill set, I have a calling, I have an assignment. And whatever it takes, I'm going to live out that assignment. And if that means I die broken and lonely, but I've carried out my assignment, I'm okay with that, because my assignment isn't temporal, it's eternal. There you are. If that challenges the way you think, let's have a conversation. And if you're really industrious about that conversation, bring your happy self right here to the studio and we'll have a conversation about that. Love to chat with people, especially intelligent, compassionate people that I disagree with. They make great conversations. Listen, if you're not sure if you need a mentor or a coach, the answer is yes. Who it's going to be, that's totally on you. What are they going to train you in? That's totally on you. If you have a mentor, it should be somebody in your vertical industry who can look ahead of you and go, hang on, I see something coming you may not see yet. I see an opportunity you may have overlooked. I see a pitfall that if you're not careful, it's going to destroy you. Now in character, I can mentor you in that because I had a lot of those pitfalls, fallen down a lot of crevasses and had to work my way back out again. If it's relationships, I can probably mentor you in that. If it's your faith, if it's your marriage, if it's raising teenage boys or raising teenage girls or building a business on a bootstrap, been there, done that, I got some insights for you. I'll be glad to mentor you. But your mentor should be in the category where you need to grow. Your coach, on the other hand, needs to be an expert at coaching, somebody who understands where the challenges are that are probably in your blind spots, who can poke you and squeeze your pineapple. Because you know what you get out of a pineapple when you squeeze it? Do you know how hard you have to squeeze a pineapple to get ketchup out of it? You can't. But when you put it under pressure, what's really inside there, that's what comes out. That's the job of a good coach. That's my job. Leadership and communication, glad to help you with those things. You want to know how to do mergers and acquisitions, big finance, big money? I'm out. I'm still learning. I got a long way to go. But I can point you to some people who do. If you don't have a coach, if you don't have a mentor, today's the day to start looking. It's like building a tree house. The best time was 10 years ago to plant your tree, maybe 20 years ago. And you're going to build it in somebody else's tree, or you're going to build a tree house way down the road from now. That's up to you. Make decisions today with the best information you have, or make decisions 5 years ago. Well, that's a choice. But if you start now making better decisions because you have a coach or a mentor, the tough decisions that are coming will be a whole lot easier to make. It's really hard to fire somebody who's been around for 5 years. It's a whole lot easier to have better hiring practices before they start. True story. Ask anybody in HR. Ask anybody who's run a business. Ask anybody who's tried to fire somebody who refused to leave. Maybe they just quit working and they're still hanging around. Make those decisions 5 years ago, not today. Get a coach today so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're way ahead of the game. I know without a doubt that if it hadn't been for Steve Siebold and James Malinchek and Craig Duswalt and all of these guys that I paid early on to be a part of their environment, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I hadn't joined the John Maxwell team, gone through the Dale Carnegie training, coached it for 5 years, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I hadn't worked with Randy Weiss and Josh Weiss at IBN Television, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I hadn't served alongside ministry leaders at NRB, just dragging their bags and standing in their booth, I wouldn't be where I am today. But the accumulation of all of those things has excelled my success by at least 10 years. I know, sad to say, 15 years later, I'm still 10 years ahead of myself. Whew. Imagine where I'd be if I didn't have all those people in my life. Imagine where you would be if you had a coach or a mentor who had an idea where you're going. They've been there before. That's worth every penny you could invest. I promise you it is. The payoff is worth so much more. But pick your coaches wisely. I've had a lot of people come to me after working with me for 90 days to 6 months. They'll say, I've gotten more out of you in 90 days than people I've spent 6 figures on in the past. Choose your coaches wisely. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, or Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development.